Let me just say, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it will be difficult to express just how honored and delighted my wife, Mrs. Ojo Maduekwe, whom I have to acknowledge in a very special way so I can serve my dinner when we go back home. We really feel honored to be here. I look forward to this event. I was last here in this city in 1999, and even as Minister of Transport, this great icon of the civil rights movement, a man that has inspired many of us far away from America with his extraordinary humanity. I mean, no less a person than Ambassador Andrew Young. He had invited me to Atlanta when I was Minister of Transport, and naturally I jumped at the opportunity, but other office concerns did not make it possible. So I've been conspiring for an opportunity, and little did I know that it would come in this grand manner by being invited by this powerful, venerable institution. I want to say thank you very much for the invitation, and in the process of doing so, convey to you the appreciation and good wishes of my president, our president, President of Nigeria, President Ojo Maduekwe. An opportunity by a Nigerian government official to share the vision of his country with a distinguished audience in the most powerful nation on earth has long been entrenched in the tradition of continuously excellent relations between Nigeria and the United States, even before independence in 1960. Such an experience is even more treasured when it's on the heels of the epoch-making event, the event of the idea of America attaining unprecedented affirmation and celebration in the election of the first American, a post-racial African American, the Tiger Woods of American politics, as president of the country of Abraham Lincoln. And so when I was invited to speak on Nigeria and the next US administration, I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to stay engaged early enough. And so I'm speaking on the title, Old Ties in New Times. The prospects of a more perfect American Union, which is truly the best gift to a turbulent world in the first decade of the 21st century, is the real significance of Senator Barack Obama's historic election. That election, of course, validates President Lyndon Johnson's observation on March 15, 1964, just before the passage of the Civil Rights Act, that at times history and fate meet at a single time, in a single place, to shape a turning point in man's unending search for freedom. Nigeria salutes America for this breakthrough. Speaking for myself, who has the privilege of being invited to speak at the Venerable Southern Center for International Studies here in Atlanta, there could be no better time to be foreign minister of the world's biggest black country. After all, it was here in Atlanta it all started. The transcendental and transforming, I dare say almost spiritual, potential of this singular event offers an incredible opportunity for continental self-discovery in left-behind Africa, the poorest continent in the world, the only continent that has escaped from the prosperity curve that has been happening all over the world past 30 years. The continent that produced Barack Obama's father will now be easier to be mobilized away from a lacrimal, yes, we cry, outlook to an energizing, yes, we can posture. After all, it's all in the mind. You can call it the audacity of hope. America, in the unassailable words of Farid Zakaria, is creating the first universal nation made up of all colors, races, and creeds, living and working together in considerable harmony. A place where people all over the world can work, mingle, mix, and share in a common dream and a common destiny. A place where openness has made it possible to respond quickly and flexibly to new economic times, to manage change and diversity with a remarkable ease, and to push forward the boundaries of individual freedom and autonomy. That is the America we want to know, and that is the America we are celebrating, and that is the America that has made history on November 4 this year. For us in Africa, this is the real essence of Obama's election. It goes beyond having someone of our race, someone who looks like me in the White House. It is about the inclusiveness of participatory democracy, the elegance of a peaceful transfer of power, the invigorating ethic of the freedom of expression, the sanctity of the rule of law, respect for minorities, the nurturing of an opportunity society, and the capacity of a nation to continue to reinvent itself. It's indeed about the American dream being experienced by all God's children. Beyond the song and dance in Mother Africa, to celebrate this awesome development is a sober, adult realization that we, the continent's political elite, are soon running out of excuses for failure. That the principle of merit and fair play that produced the son of a Kenyan father to be the president of America should also be possible in Africa. And that Nigeria, by reason of demography, geography, history, culture, and an Afrocentric foreign policy tradition, has a special responsibility here. I stand here in this land of the brave and the free to affirm that the administration of President Umaru Yar'Adua, whose felicitations I bring to this audience, is determined to provide exactly that leadership. We have no choice, and we cannot afford to fail. The meaning of my being here in Atlanta, the home of Dr. Martin Luther King, the Moses that brought things to Canaan's age, cannot be lost on one. It was here that it all started. And when I worship on Sunday, next Sunday, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in downtown Atlanta, it will be a pilgrimage and an appreciation of how it one-time pastor's prayer, for a time when a man shall be judged by the content of his character and not by the color of his skin, has been answered in the lifetime of every one of us here in this audience today. For us also in Nigeria, Atlanta has a special meaning of triumph of another kind. Our young soccer team picked up the Olympic Gold Cup here in 1996. A prophecy of things to come. Besides, Atlanta is well known for its conducive and friendly climate, as well as for promoting African values and projecting the historical and cultural links between the United States and Africa. Atlanta is the headquarters of Delta Airlines, which made its inaugural direct flight from Atlanta to Lagos, Nigeria on 3rd December 2007. It, of course, is a place that great companies like Chevron, whose hospitality we're enjoying this afternoon, continues to make a very strong impact. Atlanta, against this backdrop, appears to be a veritable platform not only for building new bridges of understanding and cooperation, but also being the catalyst for a new partnership that the Yar'Adua administration expects to have with the United States under President Obama. Such a partnership is natural against the background of Nigeria's foreign policy agenda under President Umaru Yar'Adua administration, which is shared by a determination to discharge Nigeria's responsibility for regional stability, good governance, democratic consolidation, and pro-business economic policies. Nigeria's foreign policy engagement with the United States goes as far back as October 7, 1960, when Nigeria, to the surprise of many, and you know the countries that will have felt surprised about this, and who thought they were more qualified for this role than the United States. Nigeria chose the United States to perform the symbolic and crucial role of presenting the new sovereign state of Nigeria to the United Nations General Assembly. In performing this honorific duty, the then U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Christian Herter, noted that, and I quote, "The people of Nigeria have won their independence by demonstrating time and again in many fields that Nigerians are anxious to enjoy the satisfaction of independence and are fully capable of assuming its responsibilities, reaching agreement among themselves on the form and structure of their federation in one of the most constructive acts of statesmanship of the past decade. Since then, Nigeria-US relations have been excellent, cordial, and mutually beneficial. It is noteworthy that, consistent with his promise of better relationship with Africa, President John F. Kennedy received the Nigerian Prime Minister Alhaji Tafawa Balewa at the White House on July 24, 1961, within barely 6 months in office, and was given the rare honor of addressing a joint session of Congress during the visit. This administration, too, has been honored within a few months of being in office by an invitation from President George Bush, and were received in the White House within less than a year of being in office, just 6 months. So this tradition has been on from the very beginning. Without doubt, Nigeria and the United States have a long tradition of cooperation in several areas of economic development, political governance issues, and maintenance of regional peace and security. The United States have been involved in the training of officers and men of the Nigerian armed forces over the years. It has also given logistic support to Nigerian military contingents on various peacekeeping operations in Africa and beyond. In the economic sector, for example, AGOA, that's African Growth and Opportunity Act, was signed into law on May 18, 2000. Our president is determined that Nigeria will increase the opportunities the AGOA Act has for our market, because Nigeria is more than oil and gas. In 2006, the U.S. was on record to have earmarked $394 million for trade capacity building activities in sub-Saharan Africa. Nigeria has more than 6,000 non-oil sector products that can be exported to the U.S. duty-free. That is why we are pushing for value addition from U.S. companies. The fairly robust profile of Nigeria-U.S. relations can be explained by several factors. On the one hand are the factors of oil and gas resources and the geostrategic leverage of Nigeria in the region. Nigeria is Africa's biggest producer of hydrocarbon resources and the 6th largest producer of crude oil in the world. As of today, Nigeria supplies more than 15% of the U.S. oil needs. We are indeed estimated to supply about 25% by the year 2015. Currently, this makes Nigeria the 5th largest supplier of crude oil to the United States, meaning that Nigeria has been and will be substantially relevant to the energy security of the United States in the foreseeable future. On the other hand, it's also the factor of people-to-people relationship. From a demographic perspective, for instance, while Nigeria is the most populous black nation, the United States has the biggest black population outside of Africa. This factor influences decision-making in so many ways. Indeed, it is estimated conservatively that there are 22,000 highly qualified Nigerian medical doctors in the United States, and this excludes pharmacists, nurses, and other Nigerian health personnel. As noted by Ambassador Andrew Young, former U.S. Special Representative to the United Nations and one-time mayor of Atlanta, Nigerians represent the 2nd most educated immigrants among the diaspora in the United States. Nigeria-U.S. relationship has, however, not been without challenges that call for closer cooperation and better understanding. There is an unacceptable level of negative perception of Nigeria and bad publicity about Nigeria in the U.S. media. I had the honor and privilege of being taken around the CNN International Headquarters this afternoon by a very fascinating gentleman who is the editorial director. And I diplomatically drew his attention to the fact that the CNN story, which has been running for some time, on how to rob a bank, there is a documentary on Nigerian genius for criminality, should not suggest that we have a monopoly of those kind of skills. That the kind of talents that CNN indirectly is celebrating have also been shown by the outstanding work of many Nigerians in America as neurosurgeons, as space scientists, as religious leaders, people who are bringing value to their community. And that the role of a very small, very, very infinitely small number of criminals should not be used to define the image of Nigeria. And that we expect, without interfering, of course, with the freedom to report whatever, we expect that friendship towards Nigeria should take that into consideration. And he felt quite contrite about what I said. And when I came into the place, apparently he had checked out on who I was beyond being foreign minister. The first thing he told me was, welcome to CNN, fellow elder of the Presbyterian Church. So I told him that as a fellow elder of the Presbyterian Church, I want him to do something about this unfair categorization of my country, and he said he will. On the part of the West, too, we expect that public funds that have been looted and lodged in some Western financial institutions, which are passing through the eye of the needle to be recovered, should be sent back to us. We also believe that United States global influence can lead to significant diplomatic support to Nigeria's efforts to making crude oil theft less attractive in the international oil market by declaring them blood oil, in the same way conflict diamonds were proclaimed illegal and declared blood diamond. I refer to the so-called Kimberley process. We expect that an energy-hungry economy like United States, the biggest economy in the world, should not adopt an attitude towards oil that comes into this country on the basis of see no evil and hear no evil. You should be interested in knowing where is that oil coming from, and the technology exists here in the United States to assist us to do some tracking of stolen oil. That lack of capacity to track the stolen oil is what is causing the problem in the Niger Delta area, and we need your support urgently on this issue. In the light of these challenges and in the mutual interest of both countries, we believe it has become necessary to predicate Nigeria-US relations on a new level of a more engaged and more sincere partnership to enable a more comprehensive exchange of ideas on issues of mutual interest. Now, concerning Nigeria-US ties under the Obama administration, I must admit that political and economic relations between Nigeria and the United States did receive considerable boost under both Clinton and Bush administration. But the gap between the promise and potential is still very wide. On the economic issues, the United States' interest has seemed to be limited to the extractive petroleum industry in Nigeria. We believe that there's need to change this. So under the Barack Obama dispensation, we expect that there will be more investments in agriculture, in ICT, and indeed in infrastructure. We feel that if the most advanced economy in the world, United States, is able to mobilize a big infrastructure push in Nigeria, indeed that will create jobs, not only in Nigeria, but also in the United States, which could be a big shot in the arm, so useful at a time of widening global recession. For instance, the United States can facilitate the execution of President Umaru Yar'Adua's 7-point development agenda, especially Vision 2020, which is geared towards making good Goldman Sachs' prediction that Nigeria could be one of the 20 leading economies in the world by the year 2020. We want Big Brother America to back us in getting into that destination. The 7-point agenda is aimed at addressing the problem of power and energy, security as a critical infrastructure, employment generation and wealth creation, developing capacity for mass movement of goods and people, addressing the challenges of the education sector, and restoring credibility to the electoral system, as well as resolving permanently the crisis in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. Given the vast natural resources of Nigeria and U.S. capital and technological endowments, there are opportunities for expanded trade and investment in agriculture, development of infrastructure, including power and energy, transportation, and human capital development. The facilitation of these programs cannot but be very welcome. The anti-corruption agenda of the Umaru Yar'Adua administration has been designed to enhance its sustainability, not a reduction, but its sustainability through a closer adherence to constitutionality and rule of law. Accordingly, the EFCC, that is the Economic Financial Crime Commission, is indeed maturing, even while it grapples with unavoidable challenges of a transition and institutional capacity building. The United States has provided assistance in the anti-corruption drive of the EFCC, but we still need to do more. and should not be discouraged because of the difficulties of transition I have mentioned. President Yar'Adua means very well in the fight against corruption. I can say, as former party secretary, that had the privilege in a meeting chaired by former President Olusegun Obasanjo and also the former chairman of the party, where we were looking ahead about how the primaries can be conducted in a manner that is free and fair, and yet that will throw up leadership that is committed to fighting corruption. There was a major interest shown in the candidacy of then Governor of Katsina State, who is now the President of Nigeria, Ojo Maduekwe. That interest in his candidacy was predicated on the fact that this was the only governor among 36 governors that went beyond the requirement of law to publicly declare his assets. This was a governor that made use of lean resources to turn Katsina State into perhaps the most developed state in 8 years of that dispensation. And these factors made him very attractive to us. I'd like to tell friends of mine, particularly in America, who are worried as to whether this president is serious in fighting corruption. I say, if President Umaru Yar'Adua is not serious in fighting corruption, if he cannot fight it, I can say this on the authority of my experience in public life for over 25 years, then we are really in trouble. And I believe that we are not in trouble. This president is determined to fight corruption, but he wants the fight to be entrenched in a rule of law culture, so that long after he has left office, it can be sustained. And the notion, and that is in the jurisprudence of many other great countries, that even the accused has rights under the law. And there is need to avoid a lynching mindset. The mere fact that someone is presumed to have stolen public funds means that he should, as if we're under military regime or territorial rule, he should just be pushed aside, put in a detention and forgotten. The president says no. Even the accused has rights under law. And if that position tends to give the impression that there's a lowering of commitment, nothing could be further from the truth. I've had the privilege in serving in both administrations, and I can tell you that what is happening now is a maturation of what we started in 1999. The initial approach was perfectly in order. It was a pioneering approach. We had to drag the rest of the country screaming and kicking onto the path of doing things right. Now, the kicking and screaming is no longer necessary. There's need to follow due process. And if due process sometimes gives the impression of slow process, that's a political price we are ready to pay. But it's not true that this administration is in any way less committed in fighting corruption than had ever been the case. Finally, on the issue of some of the matters that I think that it really brings the country together, the two countries, I just need to mention that covering an area of 356,000 square miles, Nigeria is in the neighborhood of the North Atlantic and is about the same size of California, Utah, and Nevada combined. So a partnership with us that recognizes equality and the dignity of each, a partnership that opens all the gates to Africa, a partnership that can serve as a catalyst in the integration of African economy into the world economy, as well as enhance political stability, peace and security in Africa, a partnership that can strengthen civil society and a growing culture of democracy, as well as accelerate poverty alleviation, and in fact, a partnership that is marked by mutual respect and synergy. That can be a model for a more integrated world in which the boundaries between rich and poor nations do not harden into a new form of apartheid. In the light of what I have said, there's a compelling logic for the development of stronger ties between Africa and the United States, and also, indeed, more specifically, between Nigeria and the United States. Now, what does the future hold? America as an idea belongs to the whole world. America is at its best when it is conscious of being a global heritage. The genius of the founding fathers of the American Republic was the herald of a new humanity. Consequently, what we expect from the administration of President Barack Obama is that America should continue to be an America loyal to the principles upon which it was established. In this context, Nigeria stands ready to partner with the incoming president in advancing the ideals which are espoused through our common and shared values of democracy, good governance, and the rule of law. In his thoughts on reclaiming the American dream, titled The Audacity of Hope, the incoming president has eloquently expressed what we in Nigeria will be looking forward to as a new relationship with America. And the way he expressed it is so that I can hardly improve on it. And that's why I want to quote him in a little detail. He says, "No person in any culture likes to be bullied. No person likes living in fear because his or her ideas are different. Nobody likes being poor or hungry. And nobody likes to live under an economic system in which the fruits of his or her labor go perpetually unrewarded." Unquote. But he continues, "Our challenge then is to make sure that U.S. policies move the international system in the direction of greater equity, justice, and prosperity, in that the rules we promote serve both our interests and the interests of a struggling world. There are positive trends in Africa, often hidden in the news of despair. Democracy is spreading. In many places, economies are growing. We need to build on these glimmers of hope and help those committed leaders and citizens throughout Africa build the better future which they, like we, desperately desire. Moreover, we fool ourselves in thinking that, in the words of one commentator, we must learn to watch others die with equanimity and not expect consequences." These are the words of the next President of the United States of America. We in Africa, and indeed more specifically Nigeria, will expect the incoming Obama administration to honor the pledge implied in these powerful words. If they forget, we shall remind them. And the time to start is yesterday. I'll give you an example. The U.S. national security doctrine has for many decades now rested on the notion that the U.S. security depends on what I call the trinity of defense, diplomacy, and development. It's interesting to note that America's battles, wars in the past 3 decades have taken place in the developing world, and often with their consequences for the world's most powerful nation. Since the end of the Second World War, you never fought in any country that is a modern, industrialized nation. Your wars have been in developing countries. And that's why the third leg of the U.S. security doctrine, the issue of development, is something that should be looked at more closely. And we believe that the incoming president, from the statements he has been making, has the capacity to look at that other leg of the U.S. security doctrine. Development is a major, in Africa, for instance, concerning development, a major development challenge is malaria. I just want to take that, and I won't go into many more details beyond malaria. Often the focus is on HIV/AIDS, but malaria kills more people in Africa than HIV/AIDS. Malaria in Africa leads to between 1 to 3 million deaths every year. And in any particular year, you have up to 1 billion clinical episodes. It is a major barrier to African economic development. And it's time to pronounce it to be an international scandal. As part of this statistics I'm giving you, 1 day's Pentagon spending, just 1 day's Pentagon spending, will provide enough funds to ensure anti-malaria bed net protection for every sleeping site in Africa for 5 years. Jeffrey Sachs, the irrepressible author of The End of Poverty, and currently Special Advisor to United Nations Secretary General on Millennium Development Goals, has revealed that, and I quote, "A fully comprehensive malaria control program for all of sub-Saharan Africa, including bed nets, medicines, community health workers, diagnostic training, and indoor residual spraying will require around $3 billion per year, or less than 2 days of Pentagon spending," unquote. Confronting this challenge will be an excellent test of the Obama administration's commitment to a new and more productive way of dealing with Africa. While one is not unappreciative of the commendable leadership President Bush has shown in this area, it is simply that it was a drop of water in a desert of need. Beyond the decimation of Africa's workforce by malaria is the bigger challenge of the visionary commitment of the international community to Africa meeting the Millennium Development Goals. The grim news out of the continent of Obama's father is that no African country looks set to meet those challenges on the due date of 2015. I have a daughter who just left Nigeria. She's a doctor around here. And when she came back home, her cousin, the baby of her cousin was ill. And the same day she arrived, she called on the cousin. And she came back to me, poor girl, I mean my daughter, poor girl. She said, "Daddy, I just saw my nephew, and he has measles." Now, we don't treat measles any longer in the United States. And if I came back to Nigeria, I may have to go back to medical school to know how to treat measles. It was very embarrassing for me, but that's the reality. A lot of the diseases in Africa are things that should no longer exist in 2008. And what it requires is international political will to confront them. So if the international community is to move away from a wringing of the hands to real action that can generate results, and not despondency and desperation, the Obama administration will have to provide immediate global leadership to facilitate the much needed and yet lean international support for a global aid architecture that establishes a few high-level funds aimed at critical aspects of the MDGs. And without expatiating about those funds, I'll just roll down some of these funds as follows. They're not exhaustive. We need a global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and other diseases. We need a global fund for an African green revolution. We need a global fund for environmental facility, a UN population fund, global infrastructural fund, global education fund, global community development fund. Is in the interest of the West to support these initiatives. Africa, through the Nepal peer review mechanism, has done a lot in the past 10 years at least to entrench good governance, to fight corruption, and that's why you have the economic growth rate of many African countries moving up. But we are going to the limit of where we can't help ourselves beyond what we are doing now. And we believe that this is the time for the international community to fulfill their own pledge, whether pledge arrives for Glen Eagles or Monterrey Summit. We have received a lot of pledges, but these pledges are not being met. Africa can now say, in the words of Churchill, give us the tools and we can finish the job. We believe that it's not just a matter of charity, it's a matter of international security, because in the global village, the walls are not high enough to separate compounds of misery from compounds of affluence. It is in America's interest, therefore, to provide leadership here. To deal with recession in America, there is need to stimulate growth in Africa, which remains outside the global economy. Africa should be seen not just as a crisis, Africa should be seen as an opportunity. Now is a new day in America. Africa that gave Barack Obama, Africa that gave America Barack Obama must be part of this new day. It can be done. All that is required is to return, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, another president from Barack Obama's state of Illinois, what is required by America is to return to the better angels of our nature. God bless America. God bless Nigeria. Thank you.